it was funny because to me that was how I've always, approach art and illustration. Is there's an idea behind it. It's not just an image, just without a reason. It's hard for me to just to do that. It always had to have an idea. What story was I trying to tell?
Hello, and welcome to the Flying Fruit Bowl, a platform dedicated to the discussion and exploration of art and the creative process. In this episode, I had the chance to talk to the interesting illustrator Charlie Padgett. Charlie is an American artist now residing in France, who creates a variety of conceptual illustrations for clients such as record labels and scientific journals. I thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with Charlie, and I hope you enjoy it too. So the best place to start is just tell us a bit about yourself and an overview of your work.
Okay. Well, my name's Charlie Padgett. I am originally from Kentucky in America, which is right near Cincinnati, Ohio. Actually, it's easier if I say that. That's the biggest city near where I grew up. But yeah, I mean, I grew up in a somewhat rural area, and I used to spend a lot of time on my own and ended up drawing a lot to entertain myself. So that is something that always stuck with me. And then when I was finally attending university, I also played music, and I was playing in a couple bands, and we needed flyers for our gigs. So I sort of just started drawing for the flyers again, and then it led to speaking to some friends, and I found out that I could actually make a living out of art, which was like a light bulb went off because I didn't really know what I was going to do. My plan was to be a musician, be a rock star, but I think you have a better chance winning the lottery than that happening. So yeah, I ended up I went to spend a couple years in university studying radio, television, film. And I ended up going to a design/art director school called Cincinnati Academy of Design. And it basically cranks out art directors to work in advertising. But they do teach some illustration there. The guy who ran the school, Mike McGuire, was a brilliant illustrator. And so I learned a lot from him. But I ended up working in advertising for almost 15 years in Cincinnati, always doing, again, gig posters on the side, but for touring bands. I made connections with the local venues, so a lot of national acts would come through, and they'd ask me to do the posters, and I'd always jump at the chance to do illustrations for those. Well, as fate would have it, I met my wife. She's Italian, and we relocated here to France, Bordeaux, and during that time, I was still working for agencies back in Cincinnati, and just wasn't working out. But luckily, I started to get more opportunities to do illustration, and I decided to pursue that full time about how long ago now? 7 years ago now. It's been, I think, 7 or 8 years. So sorry, that's kind of a long story, but
No, that's good.
Here we are, and it's been and basically I don't know what I'm doing sometimes when it comes to well, you'd think I would know how to market myself after spending all that time in advertising, but that's probably the hardest part for me, is getting myself out there in front of people. But slowly but surely, business has been growing, and I've sort of found a niche in the research science market, doing conceptual illustrations for them, not medical illustrations at all, but more conceptual. And it was funny because to me that was how I've always approach art and illustration. Was there's an idea behind it. It's not just making an image just without a reason. It's hard for me to do that unless I'm just doodling. But for work, it always had to have an idea. What story was I trying to tell? And the way I approached it with these science medical research journal covers was like they had never seen that stuff before and they loved it. So that's cool, and it's kind of interesting how that after I was hired by Molecular Metabolism to do a bunch of covers. Still, they hire me every year to do covers, but it kind of not to sound like I'm giving myself a bunch of credit here, but it basically other journals saw that what they were doing and then started to mimic it. And it's kind of funny because before it was just a photo, a microscope photo of like a cell, and that was always all they ever did. But I didn't know that. I just came in and did what I thought would be cool and have an idea behind it, and they ended up really liking it. So
And that's actually that really fascinating about your work, is that your work is very conceptual. It's not, in a way, like I wouldn't. It seems a very more fine art than illustration to me, upon viewing it. In terms of like, there's a lot of concept behind it, and I was actually just really fascinated by just the way you take a concept and turn it into an image. And maybe at first glance you don't necessarily understand what it is, but when you read who it's for, you're like, oh yeah, I get it. I want to talk to you a bit about what is it like in terms of working with clients and sourcing clients. So like, do you go to them or do they come to you?
well, a little of both. I have been fortunate in that the people see my work and I'll be contacted. Like I was just contacted the other day by a person in Canada that had seen my work and wanted to know if I could do a cover for them. And sure, I'm supposed to meet with them via Zoom next week. Hopefully my camera works okay. But but yeah, then so a lot that happens, I'll get a nice surprise. And it's also because I've made some connections through doing this work. It's like that some person will tell another person about me. So it's word of mouth, like
Of course.
any sort of
Yeah.
business that happens. But then I do send out promotional emails or promotional mailers, and I've gotten a couple of jobs that way too. One I did for Scientific American a couple of years ago, and there was a record thing I did a couple of years ago too because of that. But that's speaking of that, I'm going to kind of go off on a tangent here. It's also like I target art directors at like the New York Times, the New Yorker, the Guardian. What's the big newspaper in London now? I can't remember. What's your big paper in England?
Probably like the Telegraph or the Guardian.
Yeah, the Guardian and Telegraph was the other one. That's the one I couldn't remember. And I send out to these people who get tons of illustrators. They probably get, I don't know, at least a dozen or more a day, and probably hundreds every week. So all you can hope for in that, and my mentors in the industry keep telling me that just if you never hear back, just keep trying, because they may be making note, and to remember that it's a marathon and not a sprint. And I always try
Yeah.
to remember that, but it can be frustrating when you don't hear anything back and you spend a lot of time on a self promo piece and send them out and crickets, but you don't know. Maybe you made an impact. It's just they're waiting for the right job. And
Yeah, it's all about timing. It's all about
yeah,
timing. Like, I think, and also it doesn't help that we see so many images and so much imagery from day to day. I think it's hard to really create something that's going to capture somebody's attention.
right.
I think, and what is your thoughts on that actually, about like kind of the oversaturation of the art market? Is it something that you think about?
Well, I don't think about there being an oversaturation of, and I'm speaking of more of what I do, illustration and editorial sense, and the magazines, and even speaking of record covers and things like that in the music industry. I don't think necessarily there's oversaturation. I wish there was more illustration, but what I find, if a certain style kind of catches on, then there's a saturation of that style, of somebody will mimic that style. and I see a lot of it. You'll see a lot, like right now, it's a really, I kind of like it, but it's also getting a little tired, but it's that really simplified, flat, almost, if you go back a few steps, it's almost like the Keith Haring stuff in the 80s, where the figures are super simple, bright colors, flat art, and it's cool. It communicates very well, but it's like you see it in on everything right now. And I don't know. I guess it's been going for a couple of years, but that's sort of how it goes. Trends come and go, and there's times where I ask myself if I need to change more what I'm doing purposefully in a certain direction, and I realize that's not. I mean, it's okay to change if you're doing it naturally, but to change, because my style has certainly changed since I started, it's evolved. But to do it because I want to fit a style that's popular, that's like, you're going to kill yourself. It's like,
And how do you kind of figure out what is your style and what you like to do? At least what you like to do.
Yeah. I think style is, and that's something I still struggle with. And I think we put a ton, maybe too much, as illustrators, we put maybe too much pressure on ourselves to find that style instead of just letting it out. And I don't know if you know a guy, he's in New York, his name's Chris Pizzelli. He's very well known. He does a lot of work for New York Times and big newspapers. He's got a distinct style. He does a lot of portraits, and it's oil paintings. And he's something of a mentor with me. And he's just like, dude, you just gotta, whatever you're doing, your sketchbook is probably your style. You just need to make it bigger than just a sketch, and you need to figure that out and listen to those things that you like to draw and put part of yourself in there. It's okay to do that stuff. And he's totally right. And so it's, for me, it's like, I'm also always wanting to challenge the next project. I'm wanting to challenge myself. And I tend to experiment and find new ways to do some things. So, but I also have to keep in mind that I can't suddenly start experimenting so far that my work, the style suddenly was completely different, or you're going to start to alienate people who've been hired.
Yeah, it has to be a gradual change.
Yeah, exactly. Which I've gone through for sure, and probably still am. It's a little bit frustrating, because for me, I'm like, well, I wish I could just, and there are people who believe this, that you can do it all kinds of styles, and you're fine. And I don't know if that's really gonna work or not. I think
it becomes a problem becoming a jack of all trades and a master of none. Like, you can do so many different styles, but it's like you lose your personality and the kind of core of what you actually like to do.
Exactly. And you're totally right.
Because I think, I imagine, I'm not 100% sure, but I imagine being part of Illustrator is also to please yourself and the work you're doing as well, not just the client.
Right.
Like I'm assuming like you want to make sure that you're doing a piece of work that, you actually want to put into your portfolio, as opposed to just doing a piece of work for the money necessarily. And have you actually ever had an experience where you've done work that's maybe not what you wanted to do just because the money was better? Or do you always do something that you enjoy?
No, it's I have done some things because you have to do some work. Especially last year was tough. I mean, a lot of things went away because of the COVID pandemic, and a lot of businesses were weary whenever things were getting shut down with quarantine, and so I lost a couple big jobs. And then at the end of the year, things started to pick up again, and a couple of things were stuff that I didn't love to do, but one, it's, like I said, had been a dry spell, and you anytime it's an opportunity to make some money doing illustration or design, it's like, this is great. At least I don't have to go find some other sort of means of making money. So I looked at it that way, and I like to think that that's still an opportunity to learn. And even though I didn't love doing a couple of these things, I still put myself into it. Um, so yeah, I mean, I mostly most of the time I do things because it feels right. It's the right fit. And I do, whenever I'm presenting ideas, generally I present 3 to 4 ideas, and I try to make sure when I'm narrowing down that, is this an idea that I will want to work on if it's picked, or will it be like, oh, a drag? And sometimes I still fail at that because I'll put something in there and then they pick that one, which inevitably is the weakest, and
You're
it's
resigned
not
to do it
not the
now.
one
So
I wanted to do. So anyway,
like,
I hope that answers.
how much say do you actually get in the final image?
Well, in my experience, I've gotten a lot. I mean, a lot. A lot of times the art, my limited experience with the big time art directors is that here it is, and none of them have been heavy-handed. I show them the roughs, and even if I make any little tweaks along the way, I let them know. But they pretty much are hands off. I have not experienced any that are like very heavy-handed. Now, granted, those things I just did in this past November, December, weren't portfolio stuff, and they were more for business presentation stuff. So they were very, we want this, we want this, we want this. That kind of stuff happens, but overall, no. I mean, I especially with molecular metabolism, I'm kind of, they just let me go and do what I want. So it's just nice.
And I want to talk to you a little about a couple of your series that you created. Can you talk a bit about the Obscured series?
The series, yeah. Well, that one, actually, there's that one and the one with the hands that I call these idle hands, came about around the same time during the quarantine. And work had gone away, and I was basically sitting on my hands, no pun intended. But I also was experiencing a very strong creative block. I think all of the things going on in the world. I was being American at that time. Trump was doing his thing, and it caused me a lot of concern. Then there was concern for the health of my family and the world, and we all experienced that. So, but it was really giving me a block, and I was also worried about having work. So I started experimenting with, and again, it goes back to making flyers when I was playing in a band. I used to do a lot of collage work, and I decided to experiment a little bit with that. And the Obscured series were started with these really old photos that I found, and I started to look at these and mess around with them, and I started thinking of the idea of how mostly what I thought about was in superhero stories, but in general stories where characters tend to wear a mask, and how that's supposed to hide an identity, and then in itself becomes an identity that is bigger. And it just fascinated me, and I tried to think of a way to sort of communicate that idea that we wear masks. It's also open-ended. That those two series are a bit more open-ended, though I have my concept that guided me. In the end, I kind of wanted them to be a little bit more open-ended so the viewer could sort of take something from it without, it's not like the normal editorial stuff where you're trying to tell a specific story. This was sort of more open-ended. And it's funny because after I did those, I felt like this weight was lifted, and I had a direction, and I started cranking on art again, and it felt really good. So.
And how do you normally get out of creative block? Do you just create more stuff?
Well, yeah, I have a lot of post-it notes stuck on my computer on the wall, and I write little inspirational things down because I'm constantly getting stuck or feeling down like anybody, and you need a little boost. But one of them right there says the only way through it is to do it. I don't know what
That's
if I
actually
just
That's actually true though, and actually that's something that I think everybody can learn from. I think because
Yeah. I don't know who said that or if I just came up with it, but I don't know. Anyway, go ahead.
but say sorry, I was gonna say because I think one of the hardest things about any kind of project and definitely in my own line of work is starting something is the hardest.
Yeah, yeah,
Like doing
totally.
it is fine, and once you start it, it's fine. But starting it, getting into the motivational space to just get on with it is really the hardest.
It is. It's true. It's like that blank sheet of paper is so intimidating. I can't remember who called it the white bull, but there's all that white space. But yeah, you need to tackle it and tame it. And yeah, the only way to do it is just to get started. And I'm like anybody else. I procrastinate when it's time to get up or walk around. But if I'm truly stuck, and I will go for a walk, and that always helps. Or pre-COVID, I would go to sit in a coffee shop or go to the music store or bookstore. Always turn something on if I'm
Yeah,
that
like a
stuck.
different environment and kind of
Yeah,
just kind of getting outside and because inspiration's everywhere. So I guess even just going outside for a walk like that will give you some kind of freedom, I guess.
yeah. And for me, it's kind of a blessing but a curse. But when I'm working on something, I have a really hard time turning it off. So even if I'm just going to pick my daughter up from school, which I walk there, I'm thinking about it constantly, especially in that concepting phase. It's like, okay, what ideas can I come up with to communicate this story? And but yeah, it's even in the middle of the night, I'll wake up with stuff and start thinking about it, and then if that happens, then I'm stuck because I'll stay awake for hours. It sucks.
It's because you're always thinking. I think I guess as an artist or any kind of creative, I guess you're always thinking about what you're currently doing or what you want to do and what you're going to be doing. So I guess it's like an endless loop of like inspiration and just thinking of ideas and kind of just thinking about everything. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think if you're really into it and are passionate about it, then it is hard to turn that off. Um, and then my studio is in our house, so it's also all of it. It's all sort of lives here. It lives here in me, and it lives here in this house. So what can you do?
Like absolutely. And is that helpful to you to have it at home? Like, would you prefer to have a studio in a separate location?
It's not a problem. I don't have to go somewhere to work on it. But then some days I'm like, when I feel like I wanted to have a different environment, that's when I miss it. But actually, I guess overall, I'd say no. I am glad it's here because if I want to work in the middle of the night, I just come upstairs and works. And
That's a good point actually. So what's been your favorite piece of work to create so far?
my favorite piece that I've created,
Yeah.
well, I guess that changes all the time. I don't know that I've created my favorite piece yet, but I really liked the obscured and these idle hands are a couple pieces that are series. I really enjoyed working on those. I was happy how they turned out. Um, those come to mind immediately. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like whatever I'm working on is my favorite thing, and it should be, or it's actually the opposite. I don't like it when I finish it, and then I put it away, and I take it out. I'm like, oh, it's actually pretty cool. So like that one, I actually you asked me about
Yeah.
that part of the hand I excluded. I'm like, I found that, and I was like, this is actually pretty cool. I don't know why I kind of kicked it up. No, I still think the other ones are stronger, but I did want to have the series that was like 10 images long or whatever. So I still have more that I should post. But anyway, yeah, because right now I'm working on things that I can't really share yet because they're not out or I'm in the middle of them. And the whole social media thing, I feel like I need to constantly be putting stuff out there and there's pressure and I don't have anything new. So what do I do? And it's like, you need to do it because that's just the game now. And I've been pretty lax about it in the past month. So
I think social media is a tricky thing because I think there is such a pressure for everyone to be constantly on it and constantly uploading stuff. And I think in a really weird, strange way, it can be more harmful because people just become numb to your images if you post every single day.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
whereas if you post, say, once a week, then say you're posting your story for a post you're going to do, then people will look at it. I think it's for me, at least personally, I'm trying to think of like ways to engage people as opposed to being like, okay, let's just post every single day, even though I do anyway. Just where I can engage people in other ways that is not just, oh, here's like another image, or here's like another image, or here's like another image. It's like how can you engage people beyond just the images, in terms of like your process or
Right.
potential clients, or just the way that a day in the life of an artist or something like that, just something like that, rather
Right.
than just the image itself. Because yes, of course, people love the images, but people would just scroll past it.
Right.
I think people don't really understand the amount of time and effort it takes to create one image when they just scroll past it. And I
Right.
think that's kind of the biggest shame. I mean, what are your thoughts on social media? Do you enjoy it?
Um, yes and no. I mean, it's again, it's a necessity for let's talk Instagram, for example. I mean, I it's a necessity for me to promote my work on there. That's how I view it. And some of my personal life seeps in there sometimes, but I don't necessarily like to do that. Um, and it's so there's that pressure to constantly put stuff up or engage people and hopefully be found by an art director. But then it can also be whenever I'm scrolling through and I see all this great work and you start to question your own work
Absolutely.
uh, and when you get in that mind frame, then that's bad. Because I have to stop myself and say, what are you doing? I mean, this should inspire you, not intimidate you. And then when I flip it, it's okay. But I can totally, when you start comparing yourself to what other people are doing, and it can be a little heavy. But uh, and then there's Facebook, which is it's at least, well, the Americans. I'm pretty sure it's a worldwide problem, but all the negativity that goes on there and fighting, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
again, I'm on there to promote myself, but that one's tough on a personal level because it is a connection to all my friends back in the States. That platform is easier to sort of share your personal life, but I don't like going on there. If I didn't have to share or promote my own work, I don't know how much I would be. I don't really go on Twitter ever. And
Like,
it's
would you ever consider getting like a social media manager?
um if I could afford it, probably, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I would love to have, like, I would eventually, I'm not sure I'm ready for it or that I want it, but maybe getting a rep would be the way to go. But instead of doing it all myself. So
And what kind of feedback do you want from your work?
what kind of feedback do I
Yes.
want?
Yeah. Like,
What
what's
do
the
you
most
mean?
helpful kind of feedback for you as an artist?
The most powerful?
Yeah, or helpful.
Oh, helpful. You mean like just from people on social media, or what
Yeah,
are we talking about
yeah.
here? Yeah.
From people on social media, yes.
Okay. I guess, I mean, there's always people who are your friends that are going to like stuff you put up no matter what. And that's cool. I love that. But it's always kind of cool whenever, like, somebody of notoriety is like, you know, likes what you do, a well-known illustrator or an art director or whatever. That makes me feel good when I see that, because I know it's not just because they know me, it's because they know they're seeing the work. And I've had people actually send me an email about something I posted saying how they liked it so much, and that's cool. That's a good concept. I like to hear that it's a good idea. It's a great idea that you did. My friend Chris Sickles, who, I don't know if you've seen his work, he creates these little puppets and then takes photographs. So I just posted about him yesterday on Instagram. He did a cool little stereographic book. But like, he'll sometimes reach out to me when I do something, and he's like, one of these great illustrators, and it's cool that he took the time to let me know. But also, like, I liked whenever you asked me like why I cut that one out. Like, I like when somebody wants to know something about the process, or like how did and I do get that sometimes on Facebook as well. I actually have more followers on Facebook, and people want to know exactly what it was for, or how I did something, um and that's pretty cool, because it's like there's I could that means it's making them feel something, making them think. You make makes them, engages them, and that's what you hope for, rather than, to your point, just going swipe
Yeah,
swipe
because it's
swipe.
just easy to just go through Instagram and just look at it and be like, okay. But you don't think about the process behind things and kind of just the effort and the time and the conception and just kind of you know.
you're you're totally, I used to I need to probably share more of my process stuff, because I like to see that.
But
And I
that was my next question. I was just about to ask you. Do you
Yeah.
actually do you show your process that much, or do you not?
And actually, I had a blog that I haven't posted to in a long time, where I would show more of my process. I'd show the sketches and talk a little bit about why that one didn't work. And it's I don't know. I don't know why I stopped doing that. I guess I just got too busy, and
Yeah, 'cause it takes time,
yeah.
like
But I
like
need to
everything.
start doing it again, because it is. I think there are people who care, who would, and to your point, I mean, there's a need to, I think, not just always put your work, but be a little bit more well-rounded. So you're reminding me to do that. So
'Cause I think the thing is that like it seems like when you think, oh, I'm going to create a blog or I'm going to show the process, that no one's going to care about it because just like, well, no one cares anyway. But I
right,
think the people that really will be interested in that will find it.
yeah,
I think it might take, it might take a year, it might take 5 years, it might take 10 years, but people will still find it. And like the way I like to think of social media, especially, is like as an archive. Like
mm,
somebody might find your Instagram in 5 years' time and scroll all the way back through it.
yeah,
And like that's more important to me personally than it is the amount of likes whatever today's post got.
yeah,
Because like I like to consider it like, like even with the flying football, like for me it's an archive. Like if you go back to 2013 when I first started it, there's people on there whose work's probably still working now. So it's
yeah,
like, the whole idea is that I see the internet really as an archive as opposed to being focused on, oh, how many likes did I get today?
right,
Who's following me and whatever. I think more
right,
people should potentially think like that because it eases that pressure of having to do stuff now.
yeah. You're right. It's funny you mentioned the archive aspect, because I have, even recently, a band in the UK contacted me about an image they found on Dribble, and it's one I did maybe 2 years ago. And I liked the piece, but I've actually taken it out of the main page of my portfolio and put it in the archival section, because it doesn't really feel like it fits. But it was this one of the devil and the crossroads, the whole Robert Johnson thing. It was inspired by a Nick Cave lyric. And they found that, and it's like, yeah, we love this. It fits our song. We'd like to license it. It's like, cool. So yeah, so it's going to be on their single when it comes out. But it's funny, and that's not the first time. There was even a couple of years ago, a French magazine, La Vie, found an image on Behance that I had just did for myself. Whenever things are slow, I'll create a, a reason to make an editorial story or whatever. And I had done that for about how online privacy. They saw it, fit their story, wanted to know if they could have the rights, if they could use it. And since it hadn't been published before, I was like, yeah. So that was cool that I
That's
did. Like,
amazing.
I had already done it. Now it's like it was like a bonus that I got paid for it. So it
That's
actually
amazing
won
though.
an
Yeah.
award. So that's fine too.
That's yeah, actually there you go. I mean, I think that's kind of the thing about being online and posting work and not really worrying about the now because I think that's amazing. If people are finding your work, 2, 3, 4, 5 years later and they still like it. Because the thing is that you don't know what like if the image you're creating today is going to engage with somebody today or engage with somebody like it's hard to decipher, I imagine, like who is going to resonate with the work you're creating.
Right.
Because I think that, if a band saw one of your images, then obviously they're in a different mind space looking at that image as to say someone on Instagram scrolling through it today.
Right.
And obviously you don't know who, and actually it's good that they actually contacted you and licensed the image rather than just ripping off the internet. That's like a good thing.
Yeah.
Have you ever, have you ever had that happen in terms of like plagiarism and or copyright problems with your work?
Well, knocking on wood, not that I know of. I haven't seen it. So, no, I mean, the worst thing is, and it's not even a bad thing, but a couple of years ago, I was checking on like searchability of myself and those kind of things. And I found that somebody was like did a big story about me on their blog, but they never contacted me. And it was kind of weird, but I mean, it was flattering. They liked the work, and it was a student. It was like something for they're in art school, and they're talking about kind of breaking that learning, and saw that my work inspired them in some ways, and that was cool. But I kind of wish they would have contacted me, and I could have helped them even more. But like, you contacted me, was very cool.
Absolutely.
But other than that, I mean, luckily so far, nothing. But as far as I know, who knows?
And do you think that, like, what do you think that artists can do to help them not be copyrighted and their work not be like kind of disseminated in places that it shouldn't be?
How could I don't understand the question?
So like, what can artists do to stop their work being used for randomly? Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
or can it?
Yeah, it's difficult now. I mean, because there's people who are a little too hardcore and put a watermark over their image, and to me, it looks very amateur to do that. But I mean, so you can't grab it off the internet and use it because it's got that watermark on it and it's their name and it's ugly. I don't want to do that, so I don't. And I just, you put the warnings out there, and you have to pay attention and do the search every now and then. And it's not really about, I guess, necessarily preventing it as much as like you have to sort of just always be aware that it can happen and sort of try and police it. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know what can be done because it's so easy to go and just grab something. And anybody who has some knowledge of software can utilize even a low res image and be able to res it up in a way that they can use it for something else. So
yeah, that's true. And even at like the base level, you can always just screenshot it from your desktop. You don't even have to right click. Even if you can't right click it, you can still take it.
Well, I'm guilty of that whenever I'm searching for reference, but I don't. Yeah, I mean, even like using people's photographs, I'll contact them. I don't feel comfortable. I try to do stuff that's, if I'm using the photographs, which I've been doing more lately, it's stuff that's from the turn of the century or my own. I take my own.
Of course, yeah, about that later.
Yeah, so I don't know, man. That's a slippery thing. I guess it's been going on forever though. So
yeah, it's an unavoidable part of the internet, really, I imagine.
Yeah. But I've seen, I guess the worst thing is I've seen people sort of steal the idea and do their version of some of my ideas. And
yeah, that's weird. Yeah. And that's a problem though as well, because you can't copyright an idea. No. However, when you put two images side to side and they're eerily similar, it's that kind of weird murky middle ground of copyright and kind of plagiarism, which is not quite plagiarism, but then it is because it's not original, but then there's no such thing as originality. So it's a bit.
Yeah, it's been like in the science journals. I mean, they'll see one of mine and then do a version of, like, my wife, she actually was a good reason why I got my foot in the door there, because she does research. And but she'll find something and she'll show it to me like, look, they stole your idea. I'm like, and it's true, but it's usually not very good. I'm like, well, what can I do? I mean,
but I guess if you have like the original concept, the original sketch, you have the original print of the actual image itself, then I guess if anything ever did happen, you could always be like, well, look, here's the original, here's
Yeah,
the here's
yeah,
the authentication of it, really, I guess.
sure, yeah, if we got to that. And I think a lot of times, though, there's not a lot of art directors in the science journal field, so it's like some author saw one of my images and said, "Here, do this," to whoever they're hiring to do it. I
Yeah,
wish they would just come to me, but I guess they don't think of that. I don't know.
yeah, it's a bit odd, but
Yeah.
that's what people are like. I've got
Um,
one more question, which will be, where can people find more about you and your work?
the best place is my portfolio is charliepadgett.com. And then I'm also on probably Instagram would be a good one too, which is just was it at CP Illustrates? I don't know. I think there's an underline or a hyphen in there. I'll have to send you the links.
That's cool. But I'll put the links upon this
Okay.
with this anyway. I'll always link it. Well, it was awesome to talk to you. I appreciate your time. That concludes my interview with illustrator Charlie Padgett. If you have any questions or comments about it, please send me an email via theflyingfruitbowl@gmail.com or via social media sites such as Instagram. Also, the Flying Fruit Bowl audio interviews can now be found on a variety of sites such as Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you would like to support the platform, please consider subscribing on any of those sites and sharing this interview with friends and family. Also, please don't forget to check out theflyingfruitbowl.co.uk for daily art inspiration, and please get in touch if you'd like a chance to be featured or interviewed. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time folks, please stay safe.